Tesla's latest recall, it's a pretty bad one, I guess. Maybe not as bad as the stuck accelerator pedal on their cars recently, but it's pretty bad, I think. It's quite interesting timing as well, because I was actually having a conversation yesterday morning about Tesla and their vehicles and where I'm at, what's my opinion on them. Credit where credit's due these days, they are pretty great. I'm not a Tesla fanboy, but they're pretty great, even though they're just not my cup of tea, really. Maybe the Model 3 if it was more of a hatchback. So I'm kind of excited about the Model 2, which won't be called the Model 2. They often go these days 100,000 miles, no issues at all, which is better than a lot of cars, honestly. 200,000 miles. I'm seeing that a lot as well for basically all of the Tesla's models, really, and with almost no issues at all. Certainly not from the motors or the battery. Maybe an occasional handle or a sensor or something like that, but that's to be expected. You see that a lot on cars that aren't Tesla, so that's fine. I think Tesla in their first few years, they started off with a lot of issues, handles failing, constantly. That was an issue. Weird panel gaps and fitment issues, and the screens were overheating, but they've also fitted now a heat exchanger so they can literally cool it down with the air conditioning, the actual air conditioning on the screen, given that it's so powerful and got a lot to do these days. That makes sense. So Tesla kind of nailing it really these days. But like all manufacturers, though, they do have occasional issues. It's to be expected. 1.68 million vehicles, though, to be recalled. That's a pretty bad one, isn't it? Recalled because of an error with the cars not knowing if the bonnet or the frunk has been closed or if it's open. And that basically allows people to drive off, even onto a motorway, with the bonnet not closed. And then on one occasion, a car was driving quite fast on a highway in China. The bonnet popped up and hit the windscreen and cracked it open. They're doing an over-the-air update to fix it, which is pretty amazing. I like that they can do that these days. It's one of the great things I think about modern EVs. You might also think it's strange to talk about China when we talk about Tesla sometimes, but to be fair, Tesla sold more cars in China than the rest of the cars that they sold, combined for the rest of the globe. 51% of their sales total globally Chinese. So that's kind of why people talk about China and Tesla rather than America and Tesla a lot of the time. So yeah, China has a huge market and a government that is pushing for EVs. That's clearly why. And as a side note as well, did any of you watch this video that came out a couple of days ago with Tucker Carlson? It was pretty interesting, I think. He was chatting to a friend of his that basically he was portrayed as a typical man, was the word I think used, who builds things and lives and cuts his own wood for the fire at home and that sort of stuff. Lives out bush in America, rural Maine. And fascinating video. The guy kind of liked the Cybertruck actually, and said that he could swap his Ford F-150 for a Cybertruck, which I thought was interesting. But he was pretty just like me, a spoon's a spoon, and he just kind of said, I really could just swap it over, it'd be fine, it would do all of my stuff. A little bit of an issue with the range when you're towing heavy loads, because the range goes down to 100 miles roughly. That's not okay, really. You can't argue, facts are facts, aren't they? If a spoon's a spoon, it's a spoon, call it a spoon. Basically, clearly, you can also see Tucker Carlson. He's thinking about the dark side of the authorities and electrification of our societies and our vehicles. He started pretty much one of the first things he said was a comment about the government, and they will be able to shut your vehicles down if you're disobedient, which I know sounds rubbish, but may be true one day in the next 50 or 100 years. Why wouldn't it be? It makes perfect sense. So what are your thoughts on that subject, on the dark side of the authorities and the electrification of our society and our vehicles and that sort of thing? Is it utter tripe? What do you think? Like, to what level? And if you're going to comment about this, and I think there'll be a lot of people checking after this because I'm mentioning this, start your comment with where you're from, because that would be really cool if you could do that. Because I think Americans might have a different perspective to the British and the Chinese. Really fascinating stuff. But if you could start your comment with that and say where you're from, and then comment about it. Thank you for watching. I'm Ben Alexander, and I make EV news videos most days. And yeah, so I'm supposed to do it every day. I'm just a bit slack these days at the minute. I'm just busy with things. Yeah, feel free to subscribe, and remember to like the video if you enjoy it at all.